to Enlightenment of Change on webtalkradio.com. I'm your host, Connie Whitman. My guest and I are super excited that you're joining us this week. So here's the deal, right? You hear that word change, and we get that knot in our stomach, and we think, oh my God, how do I navigate this, right? Whether you've chosen the change, maybe a little bit easier. If the change has thrust upon you, a lot harder to navigate. So in the show notes, my gift to you is my communication style assessment. And here's the deal. In my, 6 decades on this earth, I have realized that no matter what you're thrown, no matter what is thrown at you, if you could communicate effectively and clearly, magic starts happening. So take the quiz in the show notes and you'll get 2 reports. First report, it'll just be your natural communication superpowers. Important to know because you want to leverage that and lean into that. Flip side, your lowest score is usually about 180 degrees when you're communicating with people who are 180 degrees different in how they communicate. That's a blind spot and that's a learning opportunity. So again, quiz, 2 reports, make sure you look at that lowest score report. I think it'll give you some really good insight into some of your blind spots. My gift to you, I hope it helps you navigate change a little bit easier. Now, to set the stage for my guests and my conversation, I chose a quote by Winston Churchill, and he says, "Success is not final, failure not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." Now, I don't know about you, but in my life, I think I have been filled with twists and turns and maybe even sometimes a little bit of upside down. And have you ever felt that way? And I'm sure you have. So how do we remain optimistic, excuse me, and filled with passion and information when life throws us these inevitable curveballs? It's not always easy to see the next step, let alone the next week or even year. So I ask you, how do you remain positive and passionate when your life and things just seem so hard for you to move forward? And this is an essential topic for us, I think, to explore this week and to discuss, because life is life. And you and I need to learn how to roll with the punches, man. And I know it's easier said than done, right? So who is my guest today that we're going to have this cool conversation about being passionate and positive, even when life turns us upside down? Well, it's my good friend, Gina Vincent. She's a visionary, thought leader, master motivator, inspirational speaker, another podcaster. She's a TV host, empowerment entrepreneur with a vivacious love for inspiring positive change in others. She guides people worldwide to design and claim their desired future and live exquisitely aligned. Her book, Exquisitely Aligned, A Pocket Guide to Your Magnificent Future, is pre-selling, and it's going to ship in February of 2025. Maybe a nice Christmas gift. So Gina, thank you so much for being on the show. And I'm really excited about our conversation.
Thank you, Connie. I'm excited to be with you. You always bring me big smiles.
Back at you. And really, right, Gina, you and I, we're not 20s. So then this is for our 20-year-olds listening too, but life is life. And sometimes we can't control everything. Right. And the only thing we really can control, right, is us, our mind, body, and spirit, certainly. So my first question for you is, I know, we're friends. So I've heard that you say life has been full of twists and turns for you personally. Can you tell everybody a little bit about that? Because then it gives context that, people look from the outside looking in thinking, oh, you've got it all going.
Right.
Well, what got us here that we've got it all going, right? So what were the twists and turns you faced?
Yeah. And it's fun that you say that, because I think it's true, right? We don't show our bumps and bruises. And like you saying, being upside down, I definitely have felt like I've been on the spin cycle in the washing machine for way too long, And I remember once my mother said to me, "When is your life going to be normal?" And I was like, what is normal? Like, it's a new normal. So several things. I mean, in my late 20s, I called off a wedding. Well, we'll back it up. I prioritized my career over a really good guy whose family I enjoyed as well. We still keep in touch. And I left New York, my home state, for North Carolina, to find out that the job that I went for, the woman who was my boss, they were trying to fire her. So they brought her from New York to North Carolina to get enough documentation at the home office to fire her. But, it was crazy. So I left behind a really good guy, and I ended up in this crazy situation where, I was new to the state, new, like starting over, new apartment, new everything. Then later I met another guy, right? Look, I was imbalanced. I was still at this crazy job, and this guy looked good on paper, nice guy,
Oh.
but didn't need to marry him. But I got engaged and I called off a wedding 3 months before the wedding. So that was another not so comfortable, right? But you can see I was imbalanced. I was in a horrible job where, oh, that looked good, safe, and comfortable. But I did marry the right guy a couple of years later, or 3 years later. And on the heels of adopting our youngest, so our son is biologically ours, I had a kindergartner, a 2-year-old. My husband was in kidney and liver failure, and I had to
Oh.
stand up against the men in white. His whole team was men, and the hardest part was my husband was one of them. He is a family doctor.
Oh.
So he was siding with the doctors that this is a practice. Meanwhile, I was like, well, you're not practicing on my husband. I have a newly adopted child, a biological kindergartner. Like, we got to get this right. And it was really, really difficult. Each of those times felt like the rug was pulled out from under me. So I was definitely upside down, sideways spinning. And I think that my story, I'm not sharing it for sympathy. It's more to say, hey, I've been there. I understand when you said the word curveballs. I've dodged quite a few of them, but I think you used the word courage earlier as well. And I think if we have that courage to stand for what we know personally is true for ourselves, like I knew I wanted my husband to live. I also knew that this engagement didn't feel right. I wasn't looking at myself in the mirror anymore. And as you see at my red lipstick, luckily my lips are full, so hopefully I got it on correctly, but I didn't look in the mirror, so I don't know what I look like. And I think if we have to stay true to ourselves and our desires. I speak about our desires, our gifts, and our truths. And I think that if we can try to remain balanced in that, then it's a little bit easier.
This is fascinating, and it's a fascinating conversation because I know I'm at a crossroad right now in my life and my career, and things aren't feeling good anymore with certain
Mm.
aspects of the business and
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
that, right? So it imbalance. I like that word too because I am definitely out of balance. I know, but see, here's the
yeah.
thing. You and I, we've done the work, we understand. Doesn't mean the answer comes easily all the time
No.
because there's trials and errors and
Hmm.
self reflection, right? And investigation and research and all
Hmm.
these other things that go
Yeah,
into it. But that imbalance, I know that I'm at a crossroad. And I said to my husband just this week, I had a really bad week. And I said, things aren't working the way I want. I'm not
yeah,
happy in certain aspects.
yeah.
The trigger, I know something's off,
Off.
so I have to kind of sit back and percolate on that
Yeah,
mentally, emotionally, right? Meditate on it. I said, but I know changes are coming. I'm not sure
yeah,
what they are yet, but changes are coming. I said, because I know that this is not okay anymore for me.
yeah,
So what does that mean? I don't know, right? I don't have an answer. That's what we're talking about. Those
yeah,
opportunities, like leaving someone 3 months before
yeah.
a wedding. Most of us, especially when you're younger, we spent my mom and dad or we've spent all of this money and he's a great guy or
Right,
he's a great gal and I don't want to leave, and we stay for the wrong reasons. And I
right,
get it. Listen, I get it because society says you can't do
right.
that. That's horrible that you're going to hurt this person who's lovely, right? So we stay in situations or we
Yeah,
stay in a job that's
yeah,
not balanced because it's safe and all these other things.
right.
Life is life. I said that in the intro, and it's not always easy to navigate. So, man, I get it. And you had like boom, 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 right in a
It
row,
was,
several things. So it's hard to find your grounding
yeah,
again. So I get it.
yeah.
Go ahead. Do you have something else to say? Because
I
I want
was, I was gonna
to
say,
podcast too.
I was just gonna add, for me, oftentimes as a female, I found that when I gained weight, that was how I knew also I was out of balance.
Mm,
Sometimes it wasn't so much like this isn't working for me. It was like, why am I gaining weight? I'm eating and exercising the same way. I'm still the same age. Like, I'm not talking now at 55
yeah.
versus 25. That's a
Yeah.
totally different body, unfortunately for me. But I have found that the weight comes on, and I had a few clients who had the same situation.
So that could be a clue
Yeah.
right? Not sleeping, all of a sudden not
Right.
sleeping could be
Yeah.
another clue. You know,
Mhm.
feeling that brain fog or
Yeah.
overwhelm, another clue. These are symptoms. So
Yeah.
yeah, I get that. My symptoms is not sleeping and that feeling of constant overwhelm. Well, you
Yeah.
create your own overwhelm, right? I know this. So then but it's a trigger for me to say you're overwhelmed, but why, right? You got to peel
Right.
back the onion because nothing's really changed, but yet you feel overwhelmed all of a sudden. You
Mhm.
don't have time. And it's funny. We have a fundraiser this evening, and I was excited to go because it's for a very good cause and all of that. But then I'm like, I just want to put my PJs on and go to sleep. Trigger. See, I know you're getting your butt out there and you're going to the show because you'll have a good time and all that. But see, that was a trigger for me to say, wow, I
Yes.
don't want to go and have fun. That's a problem. So these are
Yeah.
different things that could be clues to the listeners, right? That something might be off or out of
Yes.
balance in your life, right? So
Yeah.
the great example with the weight,
Mhm.
you know, that lack of sleep, all those things, they're good
Yeah.
triggers for you to say, all of a sudden I'm feeling what Gina and Connie are talking about. Maybe I am out of balance. So I love
Right.
those clues. All right, next questions. We've each been
Yeah.
on each other's show.
Yeah.
And we immediately clicked. You could see we're like fast friends. We live across the country. It's so funny. We've never met in person. We're clearly passionate.
Not yet. Not
Not
yet.
yet. Oh, I like that. Yes, not yet. We're clearly passionate people. I'm sure they're feeling the energy of the show, even if they're not watching it and they're listening. So tell us really, really what makes you so passionate about what you're doing right now.
Yeah. So I think that when I saw Mark, my husband, in kidney and then in liver failure based on what the surgeon did in Charlotte, where we were living at the time, I realized life is so short. Like I had these dreams of what our future was going to look like. I now had my second child through adoption. Like when Sonia came home to America, I felt like settled or complete. I know that,
Nice.
I mean, maybe you did too with your second child, but
Yeah,
for me, it was like, okay, I'm done. Like now I have my nest. I'm
I bet.
happy. And then all of a sudden it was, him living on dialysis, looking for a kidney donor. Then it became a deceased kidney and liver donor.
Oh,
And it was, you know, was he 40? Or I was turning 40. So he was 46. And it was like, wait, how could this be happening? Like, this is the wrong decade. This is the wrong time in our life. This is not what we had envisioned. And I think it just quickened everything for me, Connie, so much so that although I love teaching yoga and helping people with the mindset, it was like, I don't want to have 30 people in a class anymore. I want to work one-on-one with a high achiever who can change the world. And
yes.
then I can have another one-on-one with another high achiever who can then, like, we can cause this huge ripple more quickly than me teaching an hour and 15 minute of yoga to 30 people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's true because we want to make an impact. Well, what
Yeah.
is that? And here's the other thing too, Gina, right? Everybody listening today, but you, right, the listener, you have something you bring to the table and bring to the world that's magical and amazing that only you can do. But we
Mhm.
forget that because we're programmed through society and education, right? I know this is all stuff that you teach as well.
Yeah.
We're programmed and then we believe things and we have these deep rooted beliefs that are false beliefs, but we've never been taught how to look, dig, and reevaluate to say, well, wait a minute, what do I really want? What do I really want my life to be? I was teaching a class this week, and one of the exercises I have them do is a value statement where you have to brag about yourself, right?
Mhm.
And they were like, "Huh, this was hard." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know it's supposed to be hard
Right.
because if you don't know what makes you special, how can your clients know what's make
Right.
what's the essence of your soul? Your clients need to know
Yeah.
that. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we're buying it subconsciously, right? That's sales. It's
Mhm.
subconscious. You know this.
Yes.
So then I said, "You're lucky I didn't make you write your own obituary." And they go, "What?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, one of my classes, you have to write your own obituary. How do you want to be, make believe you're on your deathbed? How do you want
How
to
do you
be
want to be
remembered?"
remembered?
Right?
Yeah.
That's the reality of not that you did
Yeah.
XYZ, right?
Right.
It's what is that ripple effect? What did you bring to the world that only you can bring, right? Your soul's
Yeah.
purpose. So yeah, I totally get it, my friends. We have to make a difference. And I think
Yeah.
that is an important piece of the puzzle. Now,
Yeah, and
go ahead.
that legacy, like, I ask clients to do a little something different. I say it's your 100th birthday,
Oh, I
and
love
like someone's speaking about you, what do you want to hear? So you're still alive, but
I'm going to
but
use yours.
okay. Well, because mine has cake in it, Connie, right?
Sign me up, right?
Maybe some bubbly cake. Like, how could you not want to come to my 100th birthday party?
100%. Oh my God.
But I'm Italian. We have to have food and drink.
Food
But
and
I
wine.
think that, yeah, it we can get on that hamster wheel. And like you were talking about, I do speak about the same things as you with the, societal influence and what we're supposed to do in these check boxes and
Yeah.
so forth. And for me, I thought at 28 it was the right time and place for me to marry. Little did I know it was the wrong guy. It took me 6 months to figure that out. 6 months of wearing his ring to figure that out. But I think that if we can get off the hamster wheel and slow down for just a little bit, a short bit, 5 minutes to start with, and just really ask ourselves that question about the obituary or the 100th birthday, then we do want to make an impact. I think most of us do. 98% of people, I think, are like, yeah, I want to change the world in some way, shape, form.
Yeah, and I think the legacy is the important piece, right? It's not, we think legacy money, but legacy is, did you create a good human? Are they
Mhm.
productive and thriving in society and giving back in some way, right? That's really the legacy, I think, that we as parents, right? In our case, we're both parents, but I think that's the legacy of what they're going to do now, right? That we've taught them. And I think that's the legacy that my parents and your parents
Yeah.
gave you. What did they teach us? And how are we showing up in the world with
Yes.
that legacy of values and family and respect for each other, for self and others? All of those things are learned. But I think that's really the magic in life when we can pay that forward, right? And now with our kids, hopefully their kids
Yeah.
create that same family values, all of those things. Now I know you've written a few books, right? So
One.
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 Oh, you've only written the one. Why did I think that you had written another book before this one?
I just had a little book of quotes, but it was not something published. It was digital.
That's
But
what I
yeah,
was
no, no,
thinking.
no.
All right, so you just let me say the book again because I think everybody has to read this. The book is called Exquisitely Aligned, a pocket guide to your magnificent future. Tell us about the journey of why you wrote it, right?
Yeah.
And how this book came to be or why you were passionate about writing it.
So I think like you, and I don't know if I'll be courageous enough to write a second like you, but I earlier mentioned working one-on-one with people, and
Mhm.
it's an intimate process. It's usually 3 to 6 months. That means I can't work with a lot of people over the course of a year.
That's right.
And because of that, I love having TV and podcasts like you. I think we can cause that ripple in many ways, some being free, like listening to a show,
Absolutely.
which is great because it's a wonderful way to inspire your day, right? Your week or your month. But for me, I felt like I'm a visual person, so that's why I love TV. But also, I feel like with a book, it's something you can keep referring back to. And maybe one chapter in the book doesn't apply at a certain month in your life. And then something happens, and you think, I read about that. I want to come back.
That's
So
right.
I feel like having a book it was always a dream of mine. And I'll tell you honestly, Connie, when Mark was sick and then he finally became healthy, a woman my age, my blood type, passed. She was also an organ donor, and he got one kidney and her liver. And
Wow.
he's thriving. It's almost 15 years
Knock on wood.
this month. Yeah.
God bless.
But I thought at the time I'd write a book about that journey. And he would say what it was like being a doctor, becoming a patient. And I would say what it was like to be a caregiver. I'm glad I never wrote that book because I think that book would have exhausted me.
Yeah.
This book is the right book. So, sometimes I think we know we have a book within us. And so if you're at that stage where you're wondering, what is this book, or is this the right book, or it doesn't feel like my husband never was on board, like, I don't want to write a joint book with you. And he said, I don't want to talk about it, quite
Mm.
frankly. And then I realized, yeah, it wasn't for me to talk about either. But this book is more like, hey, how do you, like you said, how do you live life? How do you stay in balance? For me, it's time, money, and energy, and where you're spending that and where you're investing it. So,
Yeah, and that's interesting that he was like, yeah, no, I don't want to write this book. So right there, flag in the play, it wasn't the right book to write, even though you had the desire, it wasn't his desire. So,
right.
and the other thing too, rewrite or writing and living through it again probably
Right.
would have exhausted you. So writing a
Yes.
book that you're more passionate, not that you weren't passionate about your
Yeah. No, no,
husband,
no. You're
God,
right.
right. This is a passion. This is your sole purpose passion,
Yes.
not life passion of your husband being alive and you being excited about that, right? So it's
Right.
a little bit different. Um,
Very different. Yes.
yeah, it's interesting because the whole book writing thing is daunting for sure. The other thing though is I agree with you. I think once you do it, it becomes easier. So I do think
Yes.
you're going to write another book, my friend. But that's I'm just throwing that in the universe for you, sister. You do what you want now. But it's so funny that you never know who's listening to the shows, right? So this week I
Hmm.
had a call, one of my clients, one of my students, one of
Yeah.
my clients, the employees, she emailed me. She had just gotten another job. She's a little bit overwhelmed. And she said, I've always kind of mentored her. We become friends, right? So
Yeah.
she said,
Yeah.
can you give me an hour? And I'm like, of course. So we scheduled, we met. And she's like, oh, by the way, I listened to your podcast and whichever one, she goes, it really spoke to me. And I
Yeah.
laughed and I said, people listen. I don't know if they're gaining anything, if they're learning anything. I said, so it's so good when I get that live
Yes.
feedback. I said, oh, I'm so glad. And she knew which show and what I said
Yeah.
and what inspired her. So it just cracks me up because we do the show. You have the TV show as well. I have the YouTube channel, which if people who want to watch the video end of this, but you never know who's listening or who
Yeah.
we're inspiring or who we're triggering action from or
Right.
to. So it's really nice when we do get that feedback. But I agree, there is a ripple effect with everything we do. So it's just right place, right time. And the only way to do that is like you doing your marketing, doing the shows,
Mhm.
doing the TV. We do speaking events so that we can expand our reach so that the right people find us. The other
Yeah.
thing I wanted to comment on, I know myself because I work with corporate clients. So I only take a certain number of clients
Yeah.
each year because then it's not fair to them. I won't be able to
Right.
deliver what I deliver. So
Yes.
I love that you say, I'm not going to take on 100 clients because
Mm-mm.
then everything is watered down.
Down.
You're not going to create the ripple effect for them that
Yeah.
you're hoping to do. So I'm glad I think sometimes we look more is better. More isn't always better.
No.
Sometimes really less is more, right? So stick with me with the book for one more minute. We have another few minutes together. Tell me about the book and so how is it set up? Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, who do you think, people are listening, but who do you think can really benefit from this book? Because I too love a book that you can keep referring back to. It's not just like a James Patterson book. You read it and you remember the story.
Right.
This is almost like a Bible book that you keep by
Correct.
your bedside table, perhaps. And when you're in transition or overwhelm or whatever, that you pick up the book, right? That's what
Yeah.
I'm getting from your description.
Exactly.
Again, can you share and who's
Yep.
it for? I think that's a really
Yeah.
good place to
So
start.
it's written for high achievers who are success driven, who are at a point where they want more. And the more is in quotations because for each person it's different. I share in the book a story about how I approached a dear friend saying she was older than she is. She's older than me, married longer than I. She had two kids. I only had one at the time. And I said, I want, and I was looking for my words, and I was like, I want with my Italian hands more. And she's like, the judgment came immediately. What are you talking about? You married well, you have a beautiful house, you live on a golf course, you have a healthy child, and you just came back from a fabulous trip to Italy. And I was like, oh, okay, zip it, lock it, throw away the key. And it made me feel so alone, Connie. I wasn't expecting to be judged by this friend. Um, I spoke to my husband about it and he's like, I'll help you. What do you want? I'll get it for you. And I was like, it's not a thing. I don't know what it is, but I know it's missing. And of course, I told you when we brought home Sonia from Guatemala, I felt more complete, but there was still this something was missing. And for me, I ended up starting practicing yoga. And for me, it was the richness, the depth, the fulfillment. But for some of my clients, the more is more income. Someone who came to me who was divorcing in mediation for divorce.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her husband wanted the house and he bought the house from her, but now he couldn't pay for the three kids any money towards college. Three kids in college. We were just talking about college before we started filming, right? It's
Yeah.
not cheap. And so for her, it was, how do I build my business? So more could be anything. And it's oftentimes outside the check boxes of what society tells us we need.
Yeah.
And the book is written for that person who's at a, kind of like you mentioned earlier, at a place where like not everything in my, from the outside, everything looks perfect, right?
Sure.
The birds are chirping, your husband's fabulous, your kids are great, you're thriving, you're healthy, your business is growing, but something is off, that imbalance, there's something missing. And it's for that turning point in the life. And for me, it's about being able to see things from a different perspective. So
Yeah.
the format of the book, I wanted a short pocket guide, something you could throw within your purse, put in your briefcase, whatever, keep by your bedside, on your desk, and keep coming back to. I ask a lot of questions the way I would working one-on-one or in a podcast interview, like we're filming next week on, you're on my show. And then I have exquisite gems in there. And the gems are practices you can start doing. These are tools you use for life, no matter if it's personal or professional, whether it's for relationship, they apply. And they're things I love sharing with people. So I'm really excited that and like you just alluded to, right, with the show, we don't know who's listening. We don't know what time they're listening, what they're wearing, where they're sitting. Are they in the car? Are they in the sunshine, in a park, And I look forward to, like you, getting those messages of, hey, when I read this, I needed to hear that this day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, did I answer? Who is
Yeah.
it for in the setup? Yeah.
Yeah. Now let me answer the question. Can you give us an example of one of the gems
Mm,
so people get a vibe of
yes.
what they could find in the book, right?
Yes. So I do ask people, sometimes I think we're so close to a situation. I'll
Mm,
give you an example. I had a client, early 60s, her inner child was kind of ruling life for her in her
mm,
business, marriage, friendships.
mm,
And so I said, I think something happened when you were a child. Let's get to the bottom of this. And we got to the bottom. There was an accident, a horseback riding accident. And she fell. The horse went back to the home to get her dad, thank God, went to the front door. I mean, this is how brilliant animals are, right? And then he got on the horse and he took her right to her, which is another, like I'm getting goosebumps. But at the time, my client was saying, hey, my dad never really, like, I didn't feel loved in that moment. And when she told me what he was saying to her, I was like, yeah, he expressed it in a different way than a 13-year-old girl would understand.
yeah.
And so I said, let's go if you were a bird flying over this situation. So I like to call it bird's eye view, where I don't want to say you disconnect or detach from your every feeling, every emotion, but you're seeing things from a different perspective,
Mm,
as if you're watching a movie.
mm,
And there were times with some of my clients, I had to say, okay, you're in a helicopter, you're in a spaceship, because sometimes it was like, oh, I'm too attached, especially if it's a love relationship and they're like, oh, I want to choke my spouse. But she was able to see, and I said, when he told you, that's it, from now on, you're never riding alone. I am going with you. It was him saying, I love you so much. I never want this to happen again.
yeah.
She, as a 13-year-old, felt he didn't trust her.
Yes.
But, as a dad, there's sometimes it's hard to express, especially would be in his 90s now, right? We didn't speak about our feelings, I think, as much. I know my dad doesn't always say, oh, yeah, by the way, hey, you're fabulous and I love you to death and you're doing everything right. Like, it's just, right?
It's so true. It's interesting. That's an interesting story, right? Because as soon as you said, I said, I know that dad said you're never riding alone again. I knew that was going to be his answer because now we're like, I'm in my 60s and
Yeah,
with my kids, like I've done that where I'm like, oh, you're never doing that again. And they look at me like you don't own me. That's what they say. You don't own me. I go, oh,
I've
I
heard
took
that.
you into this world. I'll take you out of this world, right? Here comes my Italian, my Jersey Italian. But the reality is, as a parent, I totally understood how he felt. This 13-year-old,
Yes,
she could have died, right? So he's
yes,
thinking, I have to protect. And she felt 13, he doesn't trust me. That's why I can't
yeah,
be out alone. So it's
yeah,
so funny how we have these memories that we don't even know
yeah,
become deep-rooted beliefs. We were talking about the beliefs before that we
right.
don't even know are there until someone can pull it out of us. But
Yeah,
you have to have these conversations. So I love that bird's eye view, make believe you're a bird, right? So you're
yeah,
hovering over. And that vantage point, I think, is important too, because now we can look at it from logic, not from emotion.
right.
And now her as a 60-year-old woman saying, oh my God, he was scared for my life and for my health. It was
Yeah,
out of love, not out of mistrust, right? So it's
yeah,
just so fascinating how things get stuck in our DNA, in our
yeah.
blood, right? In our bones. We don't even realize where it's coming from. So again,
No,
we're out of time, Gina, but
yeah,
anything else you want to say for anybody listening that you think, maybe give a tip that
yeah,
of something, if
absolutely.
they feel stuck or at a crossroads, any of
Yeah,
the things we talked about today, they're going, oh my God, that's my situation. What's a
yeah.
good trick? What's a
I
good,
think that I talk about 5 elements in the book, and I'll just give you the first one. It's define your more. And I think if you can take time to journal, meditate, or I use my phone. I don't oftentimes write in a journal. I just voice to text, like I have an idea, And
I like
if you
that.
can define or start really thinking about what would it look like, what would it feel like, what would it be, what might it, if you don't have a for me, sometimes I struggle. I love to speak, as you know, Connie, but sometimes I struggle for the right word. And so for me, sometimes it has to be 3 paragraphs before then I'll go to my husband. Okay, this is what I'm thinking. And he's like, oh, you want, and one word. And you're like, that's why I married you, you
That's right.
know?
You get
But
me.
if you can sit and take some time each day, whether it's while you're sipping coffee or tea or drinking some water or on a walk, anything, and just for 5 minutes, think about what is it? What is the possible imbalance? And what would the more be? What would you like?
I like that. And that more, it's so funny, your story about your friend who's like, from the outside looking in, everything's perfect. But in your heart, you're like, I still feel like I'm missing something. And then we feel like, well, what's wrong with me? I'm
Right.
stupid because I do have everything. But
Yeah.
just because optically it looks like you have everything doesn't mean your soul has everything. And again,
Correct.
we're here to do, and then you fill in the blank, whatever it is. But that more, to define that more, and it's not always money. It could
Right.
be more health. Well, what does that mean?
Mhm.
Or what does that look like for me? And then what do I need to do that, right? To get
Mhm.
to that point, or whatever it might be. So that more, I like that because it's not, forget about the optics. In your heart, what does more mean to you? And again, it's not always the money piece. I
Right.
totally get it. A lot of times it is the money piece, right? Which is fine.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we're out of time, but thank you so much for that little tip. I love it. So here's the deal, guys. And of course, I will put the info in the show notes. If you're interested to check out Gina more, go to her website, which is exquisitelyaligned.com. I will put that in the show notes so you can click and find her. Email Gina if you have a specific, maybe you have a story and you think, Gina, can you even help me? This is what's going on. Have a conversation. When in doubt, I always believe meet with someone, have a conversation, and you can walk away with a new friend, even if they're not able to help you. So reach out, because I know Gina can help you, but reach out to Gina. It's Gina at exquisitelyaligned.com. And again, I'm going to put in the show notes if you're interested in the book. It's a book, guys, right? It's a low cost entry point here. I will put the show notes, the link for the book, if you're interested in purchasing and exploring Gina, maybe even before you have a conversation, which is fine too. Gina, As always, I love you. Thank you
Love
so much for sharing your zone of genius, your story, being vulnerable with us. I always find that so appreciative because people understand
Mm.
people's stories more than just saying, you know what you need to do? You need to journal and think about what your more is. It's out of context. What does that mean? Who is this woman? So when you share self, I think that vulnerability makes people trust us, but also say, oh my gosh, they understand me. And I think sometimes we're seeking humans, we seek to be understood,
Oh,
not judged. And it's really hard because we're taught how to judge versus understand. So just so interesting. And I hope everybody buys your book. So thank you for
thank you.
sharing.
Thank you, Connie.
Oh, always a pleasure. And I hope you will join me weekly as we question, build, and discover together, no matter where you are on your journey of change and whatever that means to you, right? It's different things for different people. I truly hope that my guests, the show, myself, our stories, our vulnerability with you, give you the inspiration to take action. And I end every show with this, Gina. Information's a beautiful thing. If you do nothing with it, guys, it's information in your brain, kind of not really helpful. When you take that action, one
Yeah.
little step, whatever that is. So what is your more? Think for 5 minutes today about what would your more look like. And again, it doesn't always have to be financial. Write it down. That's an action. Go on the website, check Gene out. Another action that you could take, easy peasy. And of course, order the book. Again, it'll be in your mailbox in February, which is a gift and something to look forward to in the dark days of the winter here in the Northeast. So again, take action. Action creates a ripple effect, which creates magic in your life, and everybody deserves magic. I love you all. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us each week. I truly do appreciate you showing up, and I do hope that my guests and I inspire you to take the action or your baby step forward to alleviate whatever's going on with that change. I love you all. I'll see you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Take care. Thanks again, Gina.